Hello again, and welcome to Story Time with Nana, Lynn, and Glow. And you may notice that I'm speaking a little quicker this evening, and I think that's because I want to get finished with the book before sleep time overtakes me. I enjoy reading in the evenings when everybody else is asleep or out in the front room watching TV, and I figure if I'm going to be reading, I may as well be putting it up for you folks. So here we go. Another's Treasure, Chapter 23. Elizabeth had just finished setting the table when the front doorbell rang. Billy was right on time. She glanced over at Mary, who was checking the rolls. She seemed calm. Anyway, Elizabeth hoped she was. Elizabeth went to the front door and opened it to find Billy standing on the porch smiling. He was a handsome man, but tonight he looked especially attractive. A blue check shirt, open at the neck, set off his dark hair and brown eyes. He wore dark blue jeans and black tennis shoes. When he smiled, Elizabeth noticed how his sun-tanned face made his perfect teeth seem even whiter. "Hope I'm not early." "Nope, you're right on time. Come on in." Elizabeth noticed he held something in his hands. He offered it to her. "I stopped by King's Creamery in Lancaster and picked up some of their peanut butter swirl ice cream. I remember that y'all really like it. If you already have dessert planned for tonight, you can stick it in the freezer and eat it later." Elizabeth smiled at him. Peanut butter swirl was Mary's favorite, and everything from King's was delicious. "Thank you, Billy. You really did not need to do that." "It's the least I could do since you're feeding me." Billy came inside the house and followed Elizabeth to the kitchen where Martha and Mary were putting the last touches on dinner. As they greeted him, Elizabeth handed the ice cream to Mary. "Peanut butter swirl from King's," she said. Her eyes widened and she grinned. "Ooh, my favorite ice cream. Thanks, Billy." He nodded at her, a shy smile on his face. "You're very welcome." "I think we can sit down," Martha said. "Everything's ready." She picked up a large platter and placed it in the center of the kitchen table. The roast looked awesome. It was surrounded by perfectly roasted potatoes, carrots, and pearl onions. "Wow," Billy said. "That looks delicious." Loud, high-pitched barking came from somewhere in the back of the house. Tink must have smelled the roast. "Heavens to Betsy!" Mary exclaimed. "I forgot to let Tink and Butterscotch out of the mudroom." "Oh, Mary," Elizabeth said. "I hope they haven't made a mess." Both women hurried to the mudroom. Fortunately, there were no accidents. The cat shot out of the room, headed straight for Martha's room, but Tinkerbell went directly to the side door, wanting to be let out. "You get back to the kitchen, Mary," said Elizabeth. "I'll take Tink out and watch her." "I'm sorry, Lizzie. I guess my head was somewhere else." Elizabeth smiled at her. "It's not a problem. Now, if any of them had left behind an unwelcome gift, it might be different." "Well, thanks anyway." "You're welcome." Elizabeth followed Mary back to where Martha and Billy sat waiting at the table. "Please go ahead," she told them. "I've got to let Tink out. I'll be back in a few minutes." She opened the door and let Tinkerbell outside. Tink did her business and came right back in. Pal heard the commotion and joined him on the porch. Elizabeth opened the door and let both of them inside. They immediately headed under the table, waiting for scraps of food. "I told you not to wait," Elizabeth said when she came in and found that no one was eating. "You may have noticed that we don't always do what we're told," Martha said with a sniff. "Yes, I have noticed that. And may I say it's very annoying." She winked at Billy, who laughed. "Would you like to say grace?" Martha asked him. Billy bowed his head and prayed a beautiful prayer, thanking God for special friends and good food. Elizabeth peeked through one eye as he prayed and saw Mary watching him. After the prayer, everyone helped themselves to Martha's top-notch dinner. The roast beef was tender and flavorful, and the roasted veggies were perfectly cooked. "This is incredible," Billy said after swallowing a forkful of roast. "I don't get many home-cooked meals anymore." "Well, thank you. After Chuck died, I couldn't stand cooking for myself. Ate canned soups and stews and frozen dinners. Being here with my sisters has ignited my desire to get into the kitchen again." "Mary and I are glad you're having fun," Elizabeth said with a smirk. "Of course you realize we're just eating your food because we don't want to hurt your feelings." Martha grunted. "And I really appreciate that. What would I do without you two?" "Have a lot more time," Mary interjected. Martha laughed. "Now, that's certainly true." Elizabeth had been watching Mary, hoping she would loosen up a little bit. Maybe Billy didn't notice, but Elizabeth could clearly see that Mary was nervous. She decided to change the subject to something that might get Mary's mind off herself. "We love the counter you made for us," she said to Billy. "It's just perfect. And all the shelves inside are great. We have plenty of room for our supplies." "I'm really glad you like it," he said. "I almost asked you about it before I started it, but I knew what you'd say." Elizabeth looked up at him in surprise. "I don't understand. What would we have said?" "You would have said it was too much trouble, that you wouldn't feel right taking it for nothing. Then you'd probably try to pay me for it." Well, I don't think that's as far as Elizabeth got before she saw Martha and Mary nodding in agreement. "You do that all the time, sis," Martha said. "You're always afraid of taking advantage of someone. But people have brains, dear sister. When someone wants to bless you, you should receive it, not question it. And you certainly shouldn't turn down blessings." Elizabeth put her fork down and raised her hands in surrender. "You're right. I don't mean to do that. I guess after Mama died, I just didn't want to feel like such a drain on our family and friends." "Well, we know that, Lizzie," Martha said, "but sometimes God uses people to bless other people. And then he blesses them. Then he has a lot of people in bird in hand to bless. They rallied around me when Mama was sick. I don't know what I would have done without them." "Well, I'm sorry we weren't more available," Mary said. "Oh, my goodness," Elizabeth said quickly. "I know you did everything you could. You came here any chance you could get. You called constantly. Please don't think I meant anything by that. You're both very supportive." She looked at Billy. "Sorry to be talking about family business in front of you." Billy shook his head. "Not a problem. I like hearing y'all talk to each other. I never had a sibling, so I have to live vicariously through you." "Well, in my opinion, you're already part of the family," Martha said. "We can never thank you enough for everything you did for Mama and Elizabeth." "I was honored." He took a sip of coffee and then put the cup down. "So how is everything going? I mean the shop." "We have a lot of customers," Elizabeth said. "We are sure keeping busy." Mary shook her head and sighed. "But Anita Smucker is certainly making things difficult." Elizabeth shot her a quick look. She didn't think it was appropriate to talk about this situation in front of Billy. Mary didn't seem to notice her. "Have you heard what's going on?" Mary asked him. Billy colored slightly. "People are talking about it some, and you've asked anyone who bought things from Anita to bring them back." Elizabeth shook her head. Obviously, keeping this to themselves wasn't an option. But as Martha said, Billy really was like a member of the family, so maybe it was okay. "Have they mentioned why?" "I don't know. To be honest, I try to stay away from conversations that feel like gossip." Elizabeth saw Martha give her a slight nod, so she briefly told Billy about the valuable item that Anita was looking for. As she spoke, Billy looked more and more surprised. She wondered why. When she finished, he seemed distinctly uncomfortable. Her sisters clearly noticed too. "Something wrong?" Billy looked down at his plate for a moment. When he raised his head, Elizabeth could see the conflict on his face. I did quite a bit of work for Warren Smucker, some remodeling and repair work." "I don't understand what that has to do with this situation." "Well, when the work was done, he couldn't pay for it. I told him he could pay it off as he could, not to worry about it. But Warren didn't like to owe anyone anything. About 2 weeks after we talked, he showed up at the shop and paid the entire bill. When I told him again it wasn't necessary, he said..." Billy took a deep breath. He said he had some special possession, something valuable, that he sold it to pay me." Elizabeth frowned at him. "But that might have nothing to do with what Anita was searching for. It could be something totally different." Billy nodded. "I understand that, but then he told me that he had nothing left that was worth much." He shook his head. "If he really had some kind of treasure, why would he say that?" "Well, now, sounds to me like we have a mystery tangled up in an enigma. So I will see you in the next video, and we will continue the search for another's treasure.